All right, let's get into our first topic then. And should the Chancellor raise income tax? That's what we're asking. Get your calls in for this one now. 0207 862 2222. It's reported Rachel Reeves is considering it in her up-and-coming budget. It would be breaking a major Labour manifesto promise, which the Chancellor has reiterated more than once.
So no increases in national insurance and the basic higher or additional rates of income tax or VAT. We're not going to increase the taxes that working people pay, their income tax, their national insurance and their VAT. Our commitment not to increase national insurance, income tax or VAT, we stand by those commitments.
And a minister today has denied that she would go back on that promise. But how would you feel if she did? Would it be a betrayal? Are you struggling to pay the taxes that you've already got? Should the Chancellor target higher earners only, or are you happy to pay just that little bit more if it helps the economy overall? And while you get dialing, let's just take a look at what the current rate of tax income is at the moment. So if you pay nothing up until £12,000, £12,500, and then we've got what's called the basic rate, and that applies up to £50,000. That's 20%. If you are earning up to £50,000 from £50,000 to £125,000, you are on 40%, and then anything over £125,000, it is 45%. Now, let me give you a bit of maths. If you add 1% to just that middle 40 rate, then that would raise £2.1 billion a year. And if you add 1% to the lower rate, £8.2 billion a year. Now, Faiza is an economist. Do you think this is a good idea?
Well, we have to understand this in the context of a Chancellor in a very tight position. So because of the way in which she has what she calls a fiscal rule, she's talking about potentially a £30 billion shortfall that she needs to make up for. Now, there is a cost of living crisis, and I am an economist, but I'm also in touch with people, and I recognise that if you're on this basic rate, even some people in this higher rate here, between that kind of 50 to 125k, they actually don't have a lot of money spare. But I think there is something to be said for looking at the additional rate, and I think that there's something to be said for looking more at wealth in particular, because I think income has barely risen actually for most people. So if you look for the, say, richest 1,000 individuals since 2010, their wealth, which was already 320 billion collectively, has gone up to 650 billion, which is insane when you think about it. It's really hard for people to understand those numbers. But if you think about it this way, if you calculate up to 1 million, it would take 11.5 days. 1 billion would take 31.5 years. So, I mean, the richest have got a lot richer in this country, but it's mostly tied in wealth. And that's what this Chancellor should be focused on. And I think her reluctance to do that is a bit about the kind of lobbying power of the super rich, pushing her potentially in a direction that will be politically unpopular. Like you said, she made this promise, and it will look very bad if she breaks that. And also, I just think a lot of people will struggle to handle that.
But you don't think it would look as bad if she breaks her promise only for the rich?
I think if they have to do something on income, they need to focus it on the richest. Okay. That won't raise enough money on its own. I work on a tax a potential idea that is a wealth tax. So those with over £10 million, which is a lot of money, they would pay an extra 2% a year on anything over that. That would raise about 24 billion.
Wasn't this originally a Green manifesto policy?
No, well, actually it's something that the Greens have taken from some work that some academics did at London School of Economics. So yeah, it's kind of a few of us are looking at this like, we need to do something. Look, we all want the same things. We want strong public services. We want to live in thriving communities. We recognise that there's been, 14 years of austerity, of cuts, and this living standards issue. I mean, so we need to do something. We need to raise money. We need to make people's lives easier. So not the basic rate, but looking at the very richest and looking at wealth in particular.
Belinda, do you think it would be a betrayal?
Totally, but completely unsurprising because it's what they do. I think for the money that government takes in tax already, we should be all living in the land of milk and honey. I mean, we should be having the best services in the world, the fastest trains, Japanese style. The government has enough money. So constantly going back to the people, stripping their backs of more cash all the time to clear up their messes also stops them from being held to account, because as long as they can rely on poor old British worker just to, fill in all the potholes that they've created over their years of government, I'm talking about the Tories as well, there'll never be any change. And I think we're in a situation now where the government says we have this huge black hole. My goodness, what are we going to do? Oh, but hang on, let's bring in digital ID. That's going to cost billions. We'll suddenly get money for that.
I agree.
And totally unnecessary, not even wanted, going to cost billions, but apparently we've got money for that. We've got quangos that were never needed before Tony Blair that cost the British taxpayer £360 billion a year. We're spaffing off billions overseas for climate aid agencies, or Singapore for 60 million, I think David Lammy.
So you think they should cut spending rather than increase tax?
It's crazy, constantly whipping the backs of the British when it's mismanaged and incompetence.
And a wealth tax?
Wealth tax, I'm not sure that works anywhere. It's been set in terms of Europe, around Europe. It hasn't produced very much money. And I think I'm done with scaring off the big wealthy people all the time.
Do you want to come back
on
that? Because I think that's a common myth that's pushed. But when you look at the numbers in reality, there's a lot of false numbers there. So actually there's this report out, the people that commissioned it were people that had vested interests. They sell these golden passports. And those numbers, even though it was reported by FT, when proper tax accountants looked into it, found that those numbers were frauds. It was fraudulent numbers saying about how many people were leaving. Some people do leave, but say even in that 24 billion that I spoke about, that's accounted for.
Are we talking about when they applied it in France? I feel like that's the one that's discussed the most.
Well,
when
so
they
that
has
massive design problems.
Okay.
But there are wealth taxes in other parts of the world, Switzerland,
but in Spain
Norway,
it only raised 2 billion. I mean, it's not going to help.
But again, there's something to be learned from the way that those are designed, and that's still, you can say that's still 2 billion, and it's from the people that can afford to pay it most. That's a really important message in how this government should be selling tax changes. The people that can afford it most should be paying for it.
All right, I'm going to go to the calls. Richard from Essex, what's your thought on increasing income tax? Would you be happy to pay it?
I would be happy to pay it, yes, but I'm retired. I'm a pensioner.
Well, then you wouldn't necessarily be paying it, Richard. Do you think it would be fair, though, for Labour to do a U-turn on a pledge in their manifesto that arguably got them elected?
No, they won't do no U-turns. All they're going to do is have another tax craze at the pensioners. They're in here in power to kill off as many pensioners as they can.
Richard, I hear what you're saying. You would rather they taxed working people, which they said they wouldn't, so that would be a U-turn, than raid pensioners' bank accounts. I understand that. But there are other ways of increasing your tax revenue if you're the government. You could do a windfall tax on companies. You could do a one-off wealth tax. You could increase capital gains. And these taxes maybe focus more on wealth rather than income of the working person. So you're not going to be taxing somebody in between this £12,000 to £50,000 bracket. Richard?
No, I know. All she's going to do is raise the pension, have a go at the pension. I mean, they're talking about changing the triple lock again. So all it is that Labour got into power, and now they're looking, well, we can't pay the pension. Oh, well, let's tax the pensioners better, and so they can murder as many of us as they can.
You said that's quite a stark accusation, Richard, but I understand your frustration at the whole process. I hear what you're saying. We're talking about income tax here, but you think income tax is a good idea so that they don't do the alternative. Richard, thank you very much for your call. John from London, what's your view on income tax? Do you think this would be a betrayal of Labour?
Here we go again. More Labour broken promises. The manifesto said they would not raise taxes. The first moment they blamed the last government, for a 20 million black hole. Now the black hole is £40 million. Who are they going to blame this time? It just shows what bad management Labour are.
Well, I think they're blaming Brexit, and it's part of the reason that they've got such a deficit to fill. Well, I suppose maybe we were all a little unrealistic when Labour said that they weren't going to tax working people. At the end of the day, Faiza, who are they going to tax if they aren't going to tax people that are working? You can't tax people that aren't working.
Well, you can tax people that get most of their money from assets. So if you look at, this is the income tax, if you look at, say,
they're not necessarily not working.
It's a different type of work though, right? So I was actually talking to my nail lady about it and saying, right, she's on at 20%. Someone of her, that kind of income getting it from wealth is on 18%. On a higher rate, you're on 24%. So if they brought some of that in line with income tax, that would be fairer. Because why should it be that someone that is going out to work every day is getting paid, getting taxed a lot more than someone that is getting it from assets and wealth that's already there? And that's not to say they're not doing anything to help that, but it's, we understand what it is to wake up every morning and do that.
The whole focus should be on, it's much fairer that we have a government that we trust, that we believe in the manifesto, that delivers on the manifesto.
But this wouldn't break a promise. It's wealth stuff wouldn't break their promises.
That can manage the money. They get away with murder. And now they're blaming Brexit. Reeves will probably blame the Battle of Hastings next time for the next, slow growth.
It's
so childish. It is so embarrassing for our country that we have the kind of governance we do. They couldn't even pour a pint in a pub. I don't know why we have such incapable, low competence people in power. And we are suffering. The farmers, the pensioners. We're spending $4 billion a year on housing men who break into our country because our government refuses to control our borders.
I think there is an important point there about why costs have gone up. It's true that costs of public purse have gone up, but that's because we've sold off all our council housing, so now we have to pay private landlords to get that housing for people that are struggling. We are overcharged for those hotels, and some of these people that own those hotels are then hiding that money. I mean, this is about a rigged system, and we do need wider change. I agree that we need wider change, but we still need to do something to raise the money because, this country is broken in all kinds of ways.
All right, let's go back to the calls then. Val from London, what's your view on increasing income tax? Would you be happy with that if it boosts the economy, if it helps us?
Hi, Storm.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking my call. Now, being a Labour voter usually in the past, I'm a bit disappointed in Labour at the moment. We must be a party and continue to be a party that keep our word. The little people on the streets believed in Labour as the working Labour's party. Now, what my challenge is, I believe that Rachel Reeves, I was so proud that we had a woman being the first Chancellor. And now Rachel Reeves, she's looking too nervous around these things. No, do not raise tax. Because as soon as we hear there's a war, we find money to fund the war. Why don't we use that money instead of putting it in all that war, give the money to what is needed. Do not keep taking money from the poor. And I do believe that level whereby it's 50,000 above for 40% of people who work so hard, I think that number should drop. And it should not be 40%.
Okay.
At least drop it to 30%.
Val, interesting. And actually, I think 26% of the general public want that 45% reduced as well, which really surprised me. I thought 26% was quite a high percentage for that view. Val, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for all your calls. Don't forget, later we are asking if it's okay to give your baby an unusual name.